Wildfires dominate the headlines every summer, but few people ever stand on the line trying to stop them. My guest today, Kelly Ramsey, spent 2 seasons on an elite wildland firefighting crew known as hotshots, hiking into some of the most dangerous parts of massive fires in the American West. Her memoir, Wildfire Days, A Woman, a Hotshot Crew, and the Burning American West, takes us inside that world, the danger, the culture of the crews, and the deeply personal journey that brought her there. This is a conversation about wildfire, belonging, and what it means to find your tribe in one of the toughest jobs in America. I'm Jason Herbert, and this is A Reckoning. My name is Jason Herbert. I'm a Southerner who lives in the West. I'm a historian, an outdoorsman, and a movie buff. I like finding new answers to old questions, and this is A Reckoning. From my time in Florida. So, all right, let's get into this. You wrote a book and I read it this last week.
You're reading it.
I sat on well, you can't see, but I sat on a couch just over there the other day and actually finished it yesterday. I was in such a hurry, Kelly, to I didn't want to skim it, and I could. Your book is not skimmable, frankly, because it's because I'm like, what happens next, and stuff, and I freaking loved it. And I tell people to a lot of people, but it's like this book was so good, and to listen to your story about being on the crew and getting into the crew and what happens. And then you and I were just talking off the air about this converging story about your own life. I don't get a chance to do a lot of memoirs on this pod. And it was so cool to listen to you think through your own life through these times. And I just really dug it. So I'm really stoked to talk to you about this book. It was really cool.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, cool. I've got a question for you then. Why write this thing? Did you think when you started out on this whole I don't know process this whole journey all of a sudden it was going to end in a book? What was the process for you going, you know what, there's something here?
Yeah, well, so I've been a writer for a really long time, way longer than I ever worked for the Forest Service. So I went to college when I was 18, like you do. And I was like, I'm going to become a doctor. So I'm going to study biochemistry. And I signed up for the biochem class, and I signed up for a literature survey, one of those big 300-person lectures where you cover an entire era of literature or something. And I hated the biochem and I loved the lit class. And so pretty much when I was 18, 19, I decided that books were it for me. I was devoting my life to words and I was going to be a writer. But like many, I'd venture to say most writers, it took me a really, really long time to figure out how to do that with any semblance of a career. So it's always, I was waiting tables, I was writing on the side. Then I was in graduate school. Then I was waiting tables again. Then I was adjuncting. Anyway, so I did all these things. And by the time I ended up working for the Forest Service in my late 30s, I had not exactly given up on writing a book, but I was just sort of that's not going to give me a living. That's not going to allow me to survive in capitalism. So I was like, what else can I do? I love being outside. I got really into backpacking. So I decided to go work for the Forest Service, and then I got into fire, which we can get into in more detail. But sort of what happened was it all came full circle. I got into fire because I had kind of given up on writing being the thing. And then when I did fire, I was like, this is a book. Why haven't I seen, there are a lot of books about fire, but I was like, why haven't I seen the book I want to read about wildland firefighting? I was like, there are these amazing books of pure history. Have you read The Big Burn?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
As a Forest Service guy.
Right over here, actually. Egan's book. Yeah, totally.
Amazing book.
It's on my Roosevelt shelf. Yes.
Oh, very appropriate.
Right.
Yeah, amazing book. Feel like most people who start with the Forest Service read that book and get this sense of history and perspective and how the Forest Service was created and kind of the flaws at the heart of public lands. But I hadn't seen a story that felt deeply personal and emotional, and I hadn't seen a story by a woman about wildland fire. There were a couple like about Cal Fire or maybe like structure fire engines. But I was like, this story of what I'm doing, like being on a hotshot crew, being a woman. So it was kind of after I did the job, I thought there's a story here. I thought it was a novel. So I started like working on a novel kind of on the side as I was still fighting fire. I took notes in my phone. And then after my 2 seasons, I started writing the novel, and everything that came out was exactly what had happened. I was like, I guess they call that a memoir. So,
it works.
Yeah. So it was like this combination of wanting to be a writer my whole life, struggling and trying to be a writer, and then kind of giving up, going into the woods, and then being like, oh, there's a story here. And I happen to have spent my whole life practicing writing stories. So it just kind of like came together perfectly, this like collision of the thing that I was doing out in the world and the writing that I wanted to do.
Yeah, so one of the things I love about the book is that it was both so familiar to me from my brief time in the Forest Service. I've been on now with the Forest Service for just coming on 3 years, but also foreign because to be able to, for you to, I've been on a couple fires now, which were like, I came back from my first fires, Kelly, and I was like, oh my God, that was so much fun, right? And I was just a driver, right? All I did was just drive around giving people food and like I got like a cool easy job, right? And
it's
I got
exciting
to eat.
though, like just seeing fire and like seeing the whole operation, the fire industrial complex.
It's insane. It's like a whole city, right? We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
And I remember like when I got on my first fire, like I'm driving there and I don't know anybody. I just kind of show up at like, at like this fairgrounds. And I'm like, where do I go? And they're like, come on in, and now I know all these people and stuff. But so there was that. And one of the things like, I guess I was prepared for, but not prepared for was the amount of women that I saw out there on firefighting and stuff like that, because people are like, come up to me. Yeah, it was cool. Like, because I'm always like, no, it's the men and women. And oh my gosh, everybody's a badass. Like everybody is a badass. It's so cool.
So many tough people out there. Yeah.
But now, Kelly, I want to talk to you about your journey to a badass. Like, what? Okay. You're like 38 when this happens. Like, and you talk a lot about this. And I was at the gym yesterday and I'm like working out and I'm like, I look over at the cardio stuff and I'm like, no, not for Jason. Like, and I had just finished the book like an hour beforehand. I was like, nah, not going to happen. I'm a driver. Can we talk a little bit about the decision-making process for you to become like, to become a hotshot? Like, what in the hell were you thinking? I guess is the easy way of saying this.
Really great question.
Thank you.
I think that maybe I wasn't thinking as much as I should have been.
Okay.
And in a way, thank God, because if I thought it through too well, I think I would have talked myself out of it.
Totally.
So this thing happened where I was a wilderness ranger for the Forest Service. So I had gotten in through trails. I was on a trail crew. Then I became a wilderness ranger. And the summer that I was a wilderness ranger, 2019, I sort of like started to get into fire in the same way that you did, where, you get red carded, which for the lay person is, you just get qualified to be a firefighter. You have to take some classes. You have to do this thing called the pack test, where you walk 3 miles with a 45-pound weight vest. It's like a little hard, but not too hard. And so I was qualified to fight fires, and I started to get interested, and I really wanted to go out on a fire with one of our local crews in Happy Camp, where I was at the time. And I don't know. I think because I was a wilderness ranger at that point, 37 years old, and I found that to be fine. It was just like backpacking a lot. It was definitely challenging, but I was like, I can do this. I could probably fight fire. And then somebody suggested to me a hotshot crew. And I think I just hadn't seen enough fire done enough, didn't know enough about the crews. Like I knew that was something kind of special or kind of
Right.
hard, but I didn't really fully know what it would be. And so I think of this like beautiful combination of like ignorance and I don't know, passion. I also just like, I'm sort of if I get an idea, I will fix it and I'll be really like assertive and dogged about making that happen, maybe to a fault. So somebody was like, go for this crew. And I was like, okay, I'll go for it, and then I called them and I went and visited them. And yeah. So kind of like, yeah, ignorance and hubris probably,
Good.
which,
That's fair.
I paid for in many ways.
Yes. All right. Well, before we jump into this whole story, and I want doing these pods is always difficult, right? Because I want to talk about the story without giving the story away because I want people so much to read this book because it's amazing. We should let's lay out some groundwork to, because oh my gosh, when you come to work for the Forest Service, everything's an acronym.
Yes.
There's so much terminology. I remember the first time my good buddy Ryan Elliott, who's one of our fire guys out here. He comes up to me. He's like, "So you're a historian, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "What's a Pulaski?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And of course, now I've got one, right? I'm like, "Look at this."
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about maybe some terminology we should know? Because you talk about what the difference is between, say, a hot shot. Well, Kelly, what's the difference between, say, a hot shot and a firefighter or a smoke jumper or a lowly driver like me when I'm on the field? What's a hot shot do? Oh, we do. We totally.
If we didn't have drivers, if we didn't have caterers, the whole thing would fall apart without all of that kind of support and logistics.
Welcome. No.
Really, you are holding down the entire fort.
People like to see you when you show up with the food, I think. So,
oh my God.
Right, and the water.
Food is everything.
Right.
The food is we'll get into that.
Yes.
Okay, so a hotshot crew is a specialized crew within wildland firefighting. Mm-hmm. So there's not so much a difference between a wildland firefighter and a hotshot. A hotshot is just like a subset, a specific type. So there's a number of what they call hand crews, and a hotshot crew is like a more specific, higher level hand crew, basically. Hand crew because we build Fireline by hand. Mm-hmm. So you can construct a barrier. I don't want to get too technical here and bore the shit out of your audience.
Please.
You can construct a barrier to try to stop the progression of fire. You can do that with equipment. You can do that with a bulldozer. You can, in some ways, do that with aviation by dropping water or retardants. Doesn't work that well, in my opinion, but you can. But then the most actually effective way is to have a hand crew go in and you cut down a bunch of trees and brush. You create this corridor that's free of that brush. And then you dig a hand line, which is kind of looks like a dirt trail. And the idea is you deprive the fire of fuel on the surface, and then it kind of slows down, drops down to the ground. And when it reaches that hand line, theoretically, in the best of circumstances, it just stops. So hand crews do that work. You have people with chainsaws, then you have people with hand tools like the Pulaski, as you mentioned, digging. And then a lot of times you light what you might call a backfire or a backburn off of that hand line or off of a road or off of a dozer line in order to really create a catcher's mitt, they might call it, for the fire. So a hotshot crew is this specialized, highly trained, highly qualified group of people. And they might go do the most difficult stretch of hand line, or they might have to hike in farther than other people. And they're what's called a type 1 crew. And then there are a lot of other hand crews called type 2 crews. So there are those resources. You also have wildland firefighting engines that primarily deal with water and hose lays. Something I've never had any interest in. Mm-hmm. All the hose stuff to be really annoying. There's a lot of connectors and little metal pieces, and I'm I don't care about that at all. But they're very important too. You really need water on a fire sometimes. And then there's a lot of aviation resources. So there's smoke jumpers who parachute out of airplanes into fires. Pretty badass. Rappellers who rappel out of helicopters into fires. Equally badass. There's so many types of resources. So a hotshot crew is just one type, but they have this certain reputation within wildland firefighting as being among the toughest crews. There are quite a few tough people out there. So I don't think we should oversell the importance of hotshot crews versus other wildland firefighters. I see that happen a lot where people act like hotshots are like the only, and it's like, no, everyone out there is doing a really hard job. But yeah, you have to be pretty highly qualified and you have to be very, very physically fit to do the job of a hotshot.
Oh my gosh. And I think that's one of the cool things that you do in the book is talk about like the physical stresses of the work, because I could not do what these guys do. First of all, I'm old. I'm old AF. I'm 48. Like I am aging out like fast.
Dude, I'm 34. I'm almost right there.
All the things are breaking down, Kelly, is what's happening. But it's totally a person's game, right? I mean, in so many different ways because of the physical demands. And you talk about like actually having to train like beforehand. Can you talk a little bit about like, because straight up, this is some hard ass physical work that you have to do. You want to talk about that?
So you have to be able to work for, 16 hours a day, sometimes 24 or 30 hours straight, doing really intense hiking, carrying a lot of weight on your back, and then doing manual labor, So if you're in the dig, as I was, you're digging with a hand tool in dirt for 12 hours a day or more. So you need an incredible level of endurance, both the kind of like short burst endurance of doing a fast hike or a longer hike, and then you need that like grind it out all day long level of endurance. So yeah, I trained, and I think most people, especially those who are new to a hotshot crew, will train like this. I trained for the entire 6 months leading up to just coming on with the crew in the spring.
Yeah.
So that's like, I had somebody reach out recently who was like, I'm going to a crew, what was your training routine? I had to like go back. I wish I could find my calendars, because I would create these like paper calendars. I would like draw out a grid for each month, especially in the 3 months leading up to the season. And I'd be like, okay, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday are my hike days. Monday, Wednesday, Friday are my run days. On my run days, I'm also going to lift. So it's like, you're running, you need to be able to run sprints, but you also need to be able to run distance, and you also need to be able to run hills. And sometimes like hill distance or hill sprints will also be incorporated. So you're like building a training program like you would for kind of almost like a marathon, where you're trying to increase your running distance over time and your speed. But then you're building a training program to get better at sprints. Then you're doing some sort of like weightlifting routine and circuit training in the gym. And then the hiking, which is actually the hardest part, you're hiking up these like 45-degree or more slopes, carrying 45 to 70 pounds on your back. So I would hike at least 2 or 3 days a week, and then run definitely 3 days a week, and lift 2 to 3 depending. And there'd be times where your body's just like so broken down from the previous hike or whatever that you have to build in a rest day, or you have to do like a really long, slow run to try to recover from the hike. So it would get switched up, but I would make these calendars and like get really nerd out. Like, my hike time is going to increase by 10 minutes every week, and my run is going to increase by this much. And like sprints, I would also run with like either a metronome or music set to a certain tempo in order to work on like cadence. So yeah, very intense. And that's all your preseason training. And then you show up with the crew and you train together for a month. And that's when you really get your ass handed to you, because you think you're fit. And then you go out to hike with the crew and you're too slow, or the hill is way steeper than what you've been hiking, or, like it's a 6-mile hill run and you've been doing a 3 or 4 mile hill run, whatever it is.
Yeah, that wasn't a thing. And I work at a dispatch center at the SO's office in Pueblo, Colorado, right? So I don't get to see a lot of our fire crews up close unless like I'm on a fire. But that was the thing I was not really familiar with, was the amount of training that happens once you hook up with the crew before you guys ever go out there. Because this is quite literally like, if you guys aren't ready, you put yourself in peril and other people who have got to come get you out of the shit. I mean, it's bad.
Like, you can endanger your colleagues by not being able to hike fast enough or run fast enough. So it feels beyond urgent. It feels like this matter of life or death to be able to keep up with the rest of the crew. And like, as people will see in the book, and this is not spoiling anything, like at first I couldn't, I fell behind in the early hikes my first season as a rookie on the hotshot crew. And A, it's humiliating, but B, you have this fear of like, will I endanger people? And also, I think this is the biggest thing because it's a very tribal culture of fire. You're like, will they reject me?
Totally.
Will I be fired? But also, will I be socially ostracized for my inability to keep up? So I panicked and, really fought to like try to keep up on those hikes with the crew. But then I also would go home on the weekend and like put on my pack, pick up a chainsaw, do the hardest hike I could find. I was desperate to get faster.
Yeah. Well, I love how you didn't pull punches in the book, talking about how like what you were going through emotionally as you were trying to like, break into these cultures, break into these barriers and like kind of prove yourself. Cause you're the first year, you're the only woman on the crew, on an all male crew. This is, I guess maybe traditionally a macho-esque kind of culture, at least from the outside it is.
Yeah.
And then you talk about this, you're both older and womanlier than can you talk a little bit about that? About like you show up like, hi, I'm Kelly. I belong here. I think like, what is that like your first day? Are you trembling in your boots? Like what's happening?
Oh yeah. I feel like I was like, I don't know if I was literally shaking, but I had that, like that first day of school feeling.
Absolutely.
When you're a kid. Actually, not even when you're a kid, when you're like in middle school, where you're like painfully self-conscious. You feel that by default you couldn't possibly fit in. And you show up on that first day and you just feel like naked and exposed and cold and vulnerable and alone. Like that is how it felt. I walk up and there are these like big garage doors rolled open and the crew has these like this bay that's their kind of like clubhouse zone. Also like where all the gear is stored. But I look into it and it's just men. And the thing is like I had tried so hard to be fit, but there's like a way that fitness looks, especially as a 38-year-old woman I'm not that small, but I'm average size, 5'6". There's a way fitness looks on me. And then there's the way that fitness looks on a 6'3" huge man who's been doing this for 7 years. You know what I mean? Like, so I look at that person and I look at myself and I'm like, oh my God, I'm fucking screwed. There's no way this is going to work. So I'm standing there just terrified, silent. And at first, like a fair number of them ignored me. Some of them were friendly. Nobody was like overtly unfriendly.
Right.
But there definitely is this feeling of like, they're kind of looking at me with the side eye, like, who's this? Is she going to be able to do this? And like, I think they look at any rookie that way too, but maybe especially when you're the first woman in a while. They didn't know that I was older and like, I have really fortunate genetics where like, I usually look younger than I am. So they thought I was like 25. Thank God.
Right.
Like took a while for everybody to figure out. So for the first like week, at least I didn't have to deal with like, they think like there's this old lady here. But it was definitely like, there's this lady here and will she be able to keep up? And then of course, like I did horribly in my first couple hikes. So they're like, oh God, she can't keep up. Then I'm like confirming a suspicion or a fear that everyone, including myself, had. So it was really rough. And it's like, the culture sometimes really overtly, sort of toxic masculinity, macho thing. Sometimes just this subtle masculinity where it's like, groups of men and groups of women behave very differently,
right?
Especially when there's not somebody else that, so when it's all just men and there's no woman in the group, like they just would like gaggle up in these little circles and they're just like talking shit. They're just like, they're making fun of somebody in almost like a mean way. And that verbal banter, that's really like, it's not warm and nice. It's like kind of almost like hostile and aggressive, but it's funny. And like, that's how men communicate. And it took me a while because I had come from like academia and the side of the Forest Service I had been in before, trails, is very like female dominated.
Sure.
So I had been in all these spaces where it's like everybody's like showing empathy and kindness and consideration. How are you doing? Do you need more water? How are you feeling? Is everything going well for you? That's not happening here.
No.
So so like I would just like stand in a group of people and be like, I don't even know how to enter this conversation. Like, I don't know how to be part of like what this social scene is. And I feel like an alien in that way. So it was just like, I felt like an outsider in every possible way. And even when people were being nice to me, that almost made it like more difficult because it's like, well, they're not being nice to each other.
Right. Well,
So
and that's
now,
how, it's how dudes communicate, right? It's like their meanness towards each other like reaffirms their own standing in the pack or the
and it's affectionate.
Oh,
like
yeah.
a lot of times, like the cruelty, the meanness, the talking shit is like a sign of love. And it took me so long to understand that. I was like, these guys are so mean to each other. What's wrong with these people? And then over time, I was like, oh, this is love. This is what love looks like between men.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had to learn, like I did by the end of a couple of years, like, actually it was hard for me to unlearn. And then I would go back into a group of women and I'd be like, why is everyone so nice? This feels really fake. Could we just like tell somebody they don't look good today?
Right.
Did you not sleep? You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I had come to be so like direct and aggressive and sort of masculine that in many ways it was really hard for me then to switch back and forth between like groups of women and groups of men.
You talk about that, and I'm reminded. And actually, he blurbed your book. I just looked back. It was like I kept thinking about Sebastian Junger's book, Tribe, right? When I was reading like portions of the book, talking about like these, because it feels, Kelly, at times you're almost like an anthropologist. We're like, I'm watching this group of men. It's like,
what are they doing? I don't understand.
Like I'm thinking of like, do I need to take a Zen while I'm reading the book? And to get a sense of like who these dudes are and how they operate, because there's definitely like these hierarchy systems amongst these guys as you're coming in, right?
Real pecking order, and some of it is based on like the hierarchy of a hotshot crew, any fire crew. It's like there's a real it's almost like it's like a pseudo-militaristic hierarchy of roles. So, you have the superintendent, you have two captains, you have two squad bosses, then you have leads underneath them, and then general firefighters underneath them. So part of it is there's like respect for that order and for who's your direct supervisor and who's their supervisor. But then there's also like, if somebody's really good at running a chainsaw, they're cooler.
Yeah.
If somebody's really funny, they might have a specific social cachet based on being like the funny guy. So there's just like, I don't know, if somebody's been there for a long time, if they've been on the crew, even if they're still a temp, if they've been there for like 5 or 6 years, there's a certain respect afforded to them, and it's like, oh, if somebody's just a really fast hiker, fast runner, like I've seen somebody be like talked about a lot with great respect just because they were the fastest runner on the crew.
Straight up.
No other huge skills, like maybe not great at digging, maybe not great at running saw, but like you're a fast runner, we're going to be like, oh, that guy, like he's a legend.
Right.
Yeah.
He's not slowing us down.
Yeah.
I felt like listening to it, like reading the book, I was like, all right, so being good on a chainsaw is like having a Corvette. Like that's, I was like, okay, that's the cool guy on this. Like everybody, like, and there's some conflicts. I don't want to get into it because people need to read this, between people who run the saw who haven't maybe necessarily earned the right to, because you got to be able to pack this stuff in, Kelly, and this stuff's heavy.
Heavy, yeah, and there's this like, you can't hike it, you can't run it. That's straight like up. An axiom. It's true. So like, your pack's already 45 pounds. All your other stuff is various amounts of weight. And then the chainsaw adds 25 pounds. So if you can't carry that 70 pounds, then like you shouldn't be able to run the saw. But there were instances, in my second year, without getting too specific, where people were, given a saw to run because they complained a lot, but couldn't actually hike it up the hill. And then you have like all this sort of grousing and bitterness, like other people just sort of like talking aside, like, well, I can run the saw, but I'm, then there's other people who can hike it and haven't been given the right to run it. And then the social order, the fabric phrase, if you don't have these rules. And I think that is to get back to Sebastian Younger, that is where this like tribalism comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But it also is, again, it's about survival in the job too, because like somebody needs to be able to hike their tool and their equipment in order to, if there, God forbid, there were an incident or the potential burnover, you need to be able to move quickly with that gear. So many of the things that on the one hand come to be like part of this tribal culture and that was sort of will like almost bully each other with are also wrapped up in safety. And so it becomes this like really difficult thing to pull apart, like which is a cultural element and which is an element of like our actual survival and safety and effectiveness as a group. And they're all kind of tied up together in a fascinating way.
You were seasonal. And I want to talk a little bit about this because I think a lot of people know, frankly, this last year was absolutely hell when we started getting cuts across the board with Forest Service, with other land management agencies and stuff like that, losing our seasonals and stuff like that. Can you explain to us like what a seasonal employee and how that kind of works versus say a full-time person? Because I think this is really important. I want people to understand why seasonals are so important to the, I think important. The backbone of like what it is we do.
They run like the whole agency. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to use a hotshot crew as a microcosm of the whole, the crew has 20 to 25 people, and maybe 7 to 10 of those will be permanent full-time employees. The rest are seasonals. So literally your crew, a hotshot crew can't go out unless they're like staffed enough. I think you have to have 18 people to even go out on a fire. So if you didn't have those seasonal employees, you couldn't go and fight fire. And they also do like the bulk of the labor, the manual labor. So so a temporary seasonal is somebody who is hired into this federal position. They come on, depends, on your location. In California, a lot of crews come on somewhere between March and May and then get laid off in the fall when fire season theoretically slows down. Of course, now we have like year-round fires. And, in the Southeast, they have some crews where the season is the opposite.
Oh, yeah.
That they come on in the Florida. I think Tennessee is like that, like where they have winter seasonals. So there are like opposite seasonals. But the thing is, and this is where the Forest Service really did something smart for themselves, but not necessarily for seasonals, you don't get any rights. So you're not accruing credit towards your retirement as a seasonal. You can get health insurance while you're on the job. So for those 6 months, but then if you wanted to have that health insurance for the other 6 months, you'd have to like pay Cobra like an absurd amount of money. They don't provide your health insurance year round.
Right.
It's like you don't get any of the benefits of a permanent full-time employee. But for some people, especially, this is why also it's like a young person's job. For some people, it's amazing because you can go and work those 6 months. And in fire, with overtime and hazard pay and everything, you can make an annual salary. Not necessarily a great salary, but like I made one year like $55,000 in those 6 months, right? Then you get laid off, you can go on unemployment. And a lot of people who are young, they travel, or they work a second job, they work in like roofing or something, but a lot of people like they take off and they travel or they ski, they enjoy their winter. So it can be lovely, but it makes it really hard as you get older, or if you were trying to have a family, like all those things where you need stability and benefits and health insurance, seasonal work does not provide. And they're just not really taking care of you. If you have mental health problems, physical health problems, like the government's like, well, you're temporary seasonal. See ya. So it's troublesome. And then when tough times come, what the government will do, not necessarily for fire, because those positions have still been hired, but for everything else, for recreation, for biology, for hydrology, whatever, all those other things where they hire seasonal crews who do the bulk of the work. As soon as the government gets strapped or just wants to like cut costs, they'll be like, all right, no hiring of seasonals. And it's like, I'm sure you see this in your job. I have a friend who's a wildlife biologist in New Mexico. Normally she has a crew of techs to do wildlife surveys, 5 people or more. She said they didn't hire any. So it's like, it's just her and she's supposed to do surveys. My friend who's in timber, same thing. No timber techs. He's like, okay, so I'm supposed to somehow do all this work as one person that we normally do with 10 people? Like, not possible. Yeah. Which is ironic because the current administration would love to harvest more timber from our forests, and yet they haven't hired any timber techs. So he was like, LOL, like, how do they think this work's going to happen? They've like massively cut the workforce. Anyway, that's getting political, but
yeah, at some point in time, I fully expect this podcast to cost me my position. So I'm just like, let's just go with it.
As long as you say that you aren't representing the views of the Forest Service, like as long as you have that caveat, they shouldn't be able to. It's on your own time.
That is correct, and I absolutely do not represent the Forest Service, Smokey Bear, or anyone else.
Exactly.
But the hard. I tell people this all the time, Kelly. I'm like, the hard part about about being a martyr is that you have to die first. So there's that. I definitely saw this because our seasonals are so important, and they're also like this amazing gateway into, say, permanent full-time.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, I love, Kelly, working for the Forest Service. I had to make this decision a few months ago about going back home to Florida and rejoining academia and being close to my kids in Tampa, or staying out here and working with the tribes in Colorado. And I miss home and I miss Florida so much, but also like I love, like, genuinely, and here's the thing, love the Forest Service. It's such a cool agency.
Same.
It's so damn
Even
cool.
Though it's like deeply flawed in many ways and like mismanaged, but I have never had like more fun in my life. And it's so cool in that, like, the breadth of what the agency does.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You have people who are like surveying for the spotted owl. You have people who are like taking a kayak and going down some remote waterway to like check for plant species or track the flow of water out of the mountain or whatever. And then you have people fighting fire. You have like, it's truly the like scope of what they are managing or attempting to manage is so incredible.
Yeah.
And to the people that you meet because of that, like, you know what I mean? Like the friends that I have made who have these, like, archaeologists. There's archaeologists on staff.
Thank you. Right. There's tribal liaisons. I get paid to go to bear dance, and do stuff. Did you? I've started doing this thing now where, like, and I noticed this when I was on my first fire last year, where like the patches and the coins, right, on the fire, they're like prison cigarettes. People are like, they become like currency. Dudes are like passing them out and stuff. Like I'm like working dudes for like the Florida Fire Service. Like, I want that patch. It's got the alligator and the chainsaw on it.
Stickers.
Dude, for reals, right? Like, I like the swag. I'm all in on the swag.
Well, and there's like a lot of status involved. Like, if you can get like the coin or something, like. And there's like even like shirts and stuff. There's like a trade operation between,
straight up.
My partner was a smoke jumper for a time. And like, so if you get to go to Alaska and you trade one of your, California smoke jumper shirts for an Alaska smoke jumper shirt, like, that's a cooler thing to have. There's like so many like intricacies of the culture like that.
I love that though. That's like one of my favorite things about this is like learning all these subcultures. It's like those dudes who trade their soccer jerseys. It's like a sign of respect. It's like, what's up? Like, your crew is good.
Yeah, exactly. And then like a sign of where you've been. You know what I mean?
Up.
Like, oh, you went to Alaska. Oh, you went to Canada. Yeah. Like, people who get sent to Australia on fires. And
what was going on during your book? Like, the guy in charge of us, he went there for like 3 months. He's like, it was the most.
Those fires in 2020, in like the winter of 2020, so absolutely insane. But yeah, I knew some people who went out there and were just like cutting enormous, like burning trees in Australia in the middle of our winter. Yeah. It's just like crazy, crazy stuff. I know. I love the Forest Service too. That's the thing, is like, we can question it. We definitely need to ask questions about some of the management of it. But like, when people talk about the Forest Service as if it has problems, so it shouldn't exist or it should be defunded or whatever, I'm always like, no. The problems with the Forest Service all center around like, it's never been funded well enough.
Thank you. Thank you. The stuff we could do, because the people we have are so amazing.
Like, genius scientists and historians and like climatologists. Yeah, like just what the Forest Service could do, how well you could manage all this public land if you actually like supported the work.
Like the crap we could do. Like people don't know. And this was one of the things when I came on board. I was like, holy shit. Like people out here are crazy good at this. And they're really they're in on it. Like they do this because they dig it. They're a bunch of nerds about what they do, whether they're rec or fire. Yeah. Like they're so like giddy to do the stuff. It's frankly, it's inspiring to like see them do their stuff, right?
That's like all the agencies. Like, I have a friend here in Bishop who works for Fish and Wildlife.
Sure.
And she's a wildlife biologist and does surveys of this rare endemic red fox that exists only in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. And they've been like tracking them and catching them on cameras for years. But just like a few weeks ago, they finally actually like captured one of these foxes so they could tag it. And it was like years of work before like catching this one fox. You know what I mean? And I was just like, that is so cool. Because they're trying to like save the fox's habitat. Like ultimately they're tracking it in order to make sure that they support it. But yeah, stuff like that where I'm just like, wow, that's your life's work. Is like this fox.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit, because one of the cool things you talk about in the book is like you get to go places on a fire. Like you're not just in California. Like you get the call, you get to roll out, and you're going like everybody's got like this list when I talk to them about where they want to go next and watch it burn. But like, can you talk about like what that's like and like the favorite places you've been?
Yeah. Well, so I only did the job for 2 years. Right. So in hotshot parlance, that's like nothing.
Sure.
I want to be clear.
Why are you even on this podcast, Kelly? Oh my gosh.
I know. Who am I?
What?
That's so funny. Yeah, because somebody was like asking me the other day, they were like, do you get interviewed about fire a lot? And I was like, I do, but I'm not a fire ecologist and not an expert. So I feel like I always need to be like, not an expert. But so I didn't get to go that many places, but we did go to the Southwest both years that I was on the crew. So Arizona, New Mexico, most of the actual fire we saw was in Arizona. But it's so wild because you train and you prepare and you learn to fight fire in Northern California, a place of massive mountains, big trees, really dense forests. And, you see a certain kind of fire behavior in that ecosystem that's usually like, well, depending on the wind and the weather, usually slower moving and kind of tends to like get into those trees and smolder and burn for a long time, really hot. And then you go to the Southwest and it's like fire moves really fast through essentially the desert. You just have like brush and cacti. So to go down there and to see fire behaving really differently, and each place you go, you also you encounter the microculture of that place too. So like, are you on a Forest Service incident or a CAL FIRE incident? Are there more, like I haven't gone to SoCal for fires, but people say like there's just like a lot more engines. There's a lot more CAL FIRE because of how fire moves and also because of the politics of the agencies. So I always wanted to go to Alaska, and the crew that I was on went, it was the year after or 2 years after I left. Canada also is pretty interesting. But with both of those places, people always then gripe too. They're like, yeah, Alaska's beautiful, but the mosquitoes.
The bugs. Like all the guys in my office are like the bugs. Like you'll go, but like you're going to hate it. They're like, you're going to hate it.
Everyone hates it.
Yeah. But what I was also told, like, well, like, look, when you go in your first fire, Jason, you're going to find it real fast. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. There is no in between. Like you're going to know almost immediately, at least for my experience. And I was like, what is this? Right.
You immediately were like, yes,
dude, I was so in so fast. And I'm friends with all the Instagram, got Instagrams, all the people that like I ran into and worked with and stuff like that. And there's BLM, and that was the cool thing, right? Like when I got to my first fire, like I'm walking around and I'm seeing all these dudes and dudettes, people who were like, they got their Forest Service shirts on, and their Nomex pants, or whatever. But then they've also got like BLM or
Mhm.
or they're like contracting agency and stuff.
Mhm.
Can you talk for someone who's never been to a forest fire?
Yeah.
What is a fire like? When you go to a fire, what does that
Like
look
the fire
like?
itself or the operation of firefighting?
Well, talk to us about the whole thing. Like, okay, so you go to a fire in California or someplace, right? When you roll up there, like there's a headquarters to a fire, and then there's going to the fire itself. We want to talk a little bit about how a
Yeah.
fire operates. People who've never had a chance to see this in person.
Totally. So, if it's a small fire, if it's
Mhm.
like 20 acres or even 100 acres or something, that's a different matter. They'll just
Right.
be, one crew, one engine or whatever. So what we're talking about is what we call a campaign fire,
Yeah.
a
It's a
really big
name.
fire. Yeah, a big fire that burns for often months. And so usually that'll be like something in the realm of, I was going to say 50,000 acres, but even that is not like something like 100,000 acres up to, the August complex, 1,000,000 acres. So something like this gets what we call fire camp.
Hmm.
And fire camp is like, I think you said, it's kind of like this small city that pops up near wherever the incident is. So you have all these like big white tents and they're often like air conditioned.
Yes, they are
I,
for the
I
drivers.
imagine it's just like when Ulysses S. Grant was going to war, this I picture that being a version of this. You
Okay.
have like this like tent encampment, like you really set up this like city and then you
Hmm.
go to fight your war. So yeah, there'll be a tent for the incident management team, and there's tents for logistics, there's tents for communications, there's tents for supplies. This thing is massive. Like it might take you 10, 15 minutes to walk from one side of camp to the other. There's tents for catering. There's also showers and bathrooms and sinks. And there's a vast amount of parking because there's so many vehicles. I remember going to fire camps and being told how many people were using that fire camp, and it'll be like 1,000. And some fires, it'll be like 2 or 3,000 people. So, like,
Hmm.
think about that. The town I live in right now has 3,000 people. So it's like, it truly is. Fire camp is like its own city, self sufficient, operating to support all these people, to feed them, to clean them, oh, there's a medical tent. So if you have a
Hmm.
health problem, you can go see a doctor. Like, it's a city. So you have all of that, and you come into the fire, and you go to camp first if you're a crew like ours to check in and get your assignment. And maybe if you've driven all day and you're getting there at dinner time, you'll go ahead and pick up your dinner. And there's a real variation too in the quality of like which caterer has the
Hmm.
fire. That's like
Yes,
another sort
I
of like
noticed that.
tiny cultural thing is like people will be like, "Oh no, not them." Um So then you get sent out to the line. So there's this whole organizational structure. You have the incident command team, and I don't want to get like too granular with this, but you have the incident command team that's at the camp, and then out on the line, you have the fire is broken into branches and then divisions, and then kind of smaller areas within your division that you're assigned to your kind of stretch of the line. So a fire like the August complex, for example, which was 1,000,000 acres at its pinnacle, has like three different branches. It was like divided into two parts, and then had like three branches on this side and like 30 divisions on each side. Massive, massive operations. So you get assigned to your division, and each division has a set of resources. So it'll have water tenders and dozers and engines and crews, and you don't want to get an assigned helicopter. I don't think everybody pulls from the same resource there, but they all have their resources assigned to them. And you go and see this person, usually a guy, not always, usually a guy who's your division. And then they line you out on what your assignment is. And then your crew goes, you have this, whatever, couple of miles stretch that you're going to be burning. Like, you go to work. But the whole thing is like extremely organized, very much paramilitary kind of system. And you're all communicating over radios, and so there'll be like different radio channels for all of that too.
Hmm.
So like if you're in X division, you're on this TAC channel. And if you're over here, you're on this other TAC channel. And so you're all communicating all the time, figuring out where everybody's going and what they're doing. It is just like, so then you get to the fire and like, maybe you're somewhere, maybe your stretch of line is somewhere where you can actually see the main fire, but you might be like miles from the main fire. If you're constructing line that you're planning to burn off of, you might be like what they interpret as days away from the fire reaching. You know, if you're creating what we call a big box, where you're like, say you're like, we're going to take this highway and the fire is 2 miles over there and we're going to prep this and then we're going to burn off this highway. Yeah, you might not even see the main fire, or you might just see the column in the distance. But sometimes you roll up to a fire, you go through all this, you go to the camp, you get your assignment, you roll up and like, there's the fire. You know, there's a 20-foot flames or 50-foot flames or whatever, and you see them just pushing across this like swath of forest, or you can see like the flames shooting into the sky. And that is a really astounding moment, especially if you've never, because the public doesn't get that close to an active wildfire. So when you go on your first assignment and you see fire of that size and you see how much smoke it's putting up into the atmosphere and you smell it, and there's so much action and hubbub around you, you know, there's like flashing lights and there's vehicles everywhere and there's radio chatter and there's helicopters overhead, and like the fire itself is like, and it's making this jet engine sound. It is like jaw dropping, you know, like you just get there and you're like, oh. what world have I entered? You feel like you're in like an apocalypse movie or something.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, all the time.
Were there a moment, and this is a thing you do really well in the book, is like you're talking about like these patterns of like real kind of almost like boring, kind of mundane kind of work. We're just fucking digging, like these, just getting through this route and this, you know, having like, and we're in this dirt and this sand, this hill, and you got the dust and we're covered in shit, right? And then there's like, oh, this is real. And we've got to be careful. And a couple times in the book, you talk about people getting hurt, or there's one real close, real near miss that's very scary. Can you talk a little bit about that feeling of like, oh, this is real, and the stakes here are very high, and if we're not careful, something could go bad very quickly. What was there a time when that first feeling for you, when you're like, oh, this is elevated, this is different now?
Yeah, you know, I think there were a couple small moments in my first season, but it's interesting because, you know, you do so much training on how to stay safe and what your systems are and what your routines are, that you can kind of get lulled into this sense of false safety, where you're like, everything's fine, totally routine. We just go out here, we cut these things, we dig these things, we burn these things, totally fine. And you have this underlying, you know, sort of undercurrent of reality and fear, where you've read about, you know, the fatality incidents, and you read about burnovers, or you hear something on the radio when you're on a fire of like somebody being in a tough spot. But I think for me, the first moment that I really understood it was when a tree struck one of my colleagues in my second season.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were on a burn operation at night. It definitely was, it already was an urgent and kind of scary situation because the fire was backing down toward this small community. And so we had to kind of like last minute burn out behind these houses. And usually, you know, with the Forest Service, like some of the resources, the engines will be doing structure protection and be near houses. But a hotshot crew isn't very often like right by a house, just burning off the forest right there. So we're already in this kind of like tight spot, urgent situation. And yeah, trees are starting to fall from the burn side of this dozer line into the dozer line toward us, you know, some little trees. And we actually, like, one had fallen into the line, and my two colleagues and I went to like check it out, and we were calling for a saw team to, you know, buck up this log and remove the tree from the dozer line, because people need to drive ATVs and stuff on it. You know, we just wanted to clear it out. And as we're doing that, this other tree, so the trees will burn out at the base and then just fall. And this is one of the primary ways that firefighters are injured and killed on fires, is just falling trees. So this tree falls onto him, and it was not huge, you know, like a 8-inch diameter or something. But it doesn't take much, especially if it hits you on the head. So he has his back to the fire. or to the burn. And the tree just like beamed him in the center of his hard hat and then hit his arm and then landed in the dozer line. And he like reeled for a second, like was just sort of like, what the fuck just happened? And then he like kind of like panicked, grabbed his hard hat, threw it, and then just like fell down. And my other colleague and I, like immediately we initiate, we have like a protocol for emergencies. We know exactly what to do. So my one colleague gets down, kneels beside him, and he does what's called holding C-spine, where you like hold somebody's head to make sure if they have a spinal injury that they don't turn their head and make it worse. And then I got on the radio and started calling for an EMT. And so we're doing all that. But even now, like I get chills thinking about it. As we're going through the motions of like getting the right medical help, getting a backboard to, backboarding him and extract him out of the forest, I'm having this like dawning realization, and it continued to kind of like wash over me for like 24 hours where I was like, oh my God, he could have just died right there. He could have died right there in front of me. And like, I could die. Any of us could die at any time. Like, this is really fucking dangerous job. And it was like, somehow I had totally compartmentalized that danger until I saw this happen in front of me to my buddy. And then I was like, oh my God, what are we doing? Like, I mean, obviously, like I still wanted to do the job. I still believe in the job, but I was just sort of like, then you run through all the factors, like, wait, why are we here burning in this last minute way? This patch wasn't snagged, meaning like cutting down the standing dead trees. If you cut down the standing dead trees before you burn, you have much less chance of all those trees falling on your head. It wasn't snagged appropriately. There were all these things. So it's like, then only when something terrible happens, you're like, wait, the Swiss cheese effect has lined up here, like all these little possible errors have lined up, resulting in what could be a tragedy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of the first moments that it really hit home for me. But it's strange how long it took. And I think that's really common in wildland fires, that people are just sort of like, we're well trained, we're aware of the risks, like we're safe, and then something happens and finally kind of like really opens your eyes to the fact that you're never are safe.
Right. I mean, because people do get really hurt and people do perish out there for any number of reasons, right? It's terrifying. And these men and women,
approximately 20 people a year die doing this job. And so like, it's very possible.
Yeah. And the thing I've seen with my own eyes is how hyper trained these people are. I mean, they're just so, I remember telling my buddy Paul, who's one of our fire guys, and I was just, as an outsider, and I try not to like man crush all over our fire crews, but it was so evident to me, Kelly. I was like, wow, these men and women are so good at this. And yet the worst can happen, right? And it's like, and it can happen in the ways that you don't expect. Like you said, the small tree, right?
Yeah.
It's not the big burnover thing that necessarily gets you.
No, that's the thing, is like, I mean, burnovers have historically killed more firefighters at once.
Sure.
Like the Yarnell Hill fire in 2013.
Yeah, awful.
Most famous. Yeah, absolutely horrific. But in terms of like what kills the most firefighters just consistently every year, it's like a falling tree, a vehicle accident, like a vehicle rolling off of a road, because the forest roads are, as you know, a hot mess a lot of times, and then you're in heavy smoke, you can't really see. So like vehicle accidents are huge. Yeah, it's not the like big dramatic thing all the time. It can be like a very little thing, a falling rock,
Yeah.
Can really hurt somebody. So
I want to move from California for a moment and talk to you about this, because when I first came to your stuff, I was like, wait, she's from Kentucky. And like, I've got this little thing over there with the Kentucky, with the home thing above me. Like, it's for me, Kelly, it's weird. I consider myself probably as much a Floridian now. I moved to Florida when I was like 22 to like go to the ocean because I couldn't stay in Murray anymore. Right. It's like, it was too small, too religious, too conservative. I was like, I'm out of here. And yet, right. And my dad lived in Uniontown, which is like right on the Ohio River. Like, it was like this little, like awful, tiny place. And so I'm reading your stuff. I'm like, holy cow, there's so many because the thing coming to your book is like there's these two converging things here, which is your story, on the hotshot crew, but also like this reckoning podcast that goes on with your relationship with your father as well. And like I had the very same thing. Like my dad was an alcoholic, and like I hadn't seen him before he died for like 10 years. Because he was so bad. And I couldn't, I had kids by that point in time. I couldn't have them around my dad,
Right. Oh, I'm
like,
sorry.
No, I thank you. But I felt like there was a real, like, I felt a lot of like similarities with you as far as the way you were kind of like wrestling with how you felt about your father and like how that informed who you were as you got older and stuff. And I'm kind of wondering if you can kind of talk about maybe this personal journey a little bit that you have in the book as well. Talk about coming from Kentucky, moving around. Your dad has this really, in and out relationship with you, and like, how does this affect like you as you kind of move through adulthood?
Yeah. So that plot line, which is also just my life, is that my dad. Yeah, right. Is that so I only lived in Kentucky from the time I was born until I was 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting, like, I think a lot about how those years are the most formative years of a child's / a person's life. Like that's when you sort of figure out identity and do you have a secure attachment to your parents or not? Spoiler alert, I do not. Who does? I actually often wonder. So the book traces kind of like, my parents split up when I was 2 years old. And then my dad was in Kentucky for a while. Then he moved around a lot. We went to Pennsylvania, where my mom was from. I moved around a ton throughout my adulthood, especially just all over this country. Went to Virginia for college, went back to Pennsylvania for graduate school, went to Texas, went to New York, went back to Texas, went to California. Anyway, literally have lived on both coasts of the country. But the thing is that like having an alcoholic parent, watching your parent descend deeper and deeper into alcoholism has this profound effect on a child and an adult child of an alcoholic. And there's literally this thing called, I don't know if you've looked it up, the laundry list, where it's like, if you're the adult child of an alcoholic, these are characteristics you might have. This is an Al-Anon thing. And I remember finding that list in my early 30s. Oh my God, I have to find it. It's like angry people scare you. Wait, I'm going to look it up right now if you don't mind.
Okay.
Laundry list.
Please.
Okay. It's so
Welcome
when
to therapy with Jason and Kelly.
Yeah, exactly. When I first found this in my early 30s, I was like, oh shit, this describes me to a T. I've done some work. Okay. So I feel like, and probably for you too, being older, you've probably worked on some of these things and they're not true for you anymore. But okay, I won't read all of them because there's a lot. But okay. We became isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. We became approval seekers and lost our identity in the process. Ooh, I feel that. We are frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. We either become alcoholics, marry them, or find another compulsive personality, such as a workaholic, to fulfill our sick abandonment needs. It goes on. Anyway, especially that one, we became approval seekers. Oh, there's another one here that's really, really me. We become addicted to excitement.
Oh, okay.
I feel like that's oh, why did you become a firefighter?
It's mundane.
Yeah, that's
nothing
super
happens.
boring.
Trees.
Yeah. So it's super interesting. And whether you believe the laundry list or not, there are these commonalities between people who have been raised by or have grown up with in some way alcoholics. It's incredibly damaging and traumatizing. So my book kind of tracks all the ways that I lapsed into these self-destructive behaviors and really chased excitement and thrills and moved around a lot and just couldn't find stability, couldn't find any sense of a stable home or community or a feeling of belonging.
Yeah.
Even though I always had friends and I've always had relationships, I kind of went from town to town and relationship to relationship, kind of never really willing to settle and stay. And I think that's that's the alcoholic child being like, I'm not safe, like the world isn't safe for me. I don't get to like stay and have my family, So the interesting thing about fire, and the book really tracks this, is that I think in some ways I went there unconsciously, of course, looking for excitement and thrills and trying to save the world. But in some ways, I think I went to this crew unconsciously looking for my family.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about fire is that like you can find a family in a crew like that. There's something so beautiful about getting to know 20 people that well. You work together day in, day out. You're together 24 hours a day for 2 weeks at a time. You go home for 2 days, then you go back out. So like you live with these guys. They are your family in a sense, during fire season. And for somebody like me, like who had this like, kind of difficult childhood and adulthood, like there was something so amazing and so healing about getting to be that close with a group of people. And like, even when they piss you off so much and annoy the shit out of you, they're like your siblings. You're like, yeah, but you're part of my tribe. You're my people, like we can get mad at each other and then we can get over it tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great moments in the book where you're like, this guy's a fucking asshole. And then a couple days you're like, yeah, we're back on it. We made up. It's fine. And it's that very much that sibling thing, right? Where you're just like, when you are that close and frankly, you have to put that much trust in somebody. I think being able to say that, like, say you're acting like a son of a bitch. And there's like this trust to say, fuck you to somebody because that
totally
the relationship's going to continue, right? That's not the end of that.
No, yeah, and you're safe to like give people real feedback and be honest about what you think. And like sometimes, that can be taken too far even within this context. But like, there's like a moment in the book, or there was a moment in my life in 2020 at the end of the fire season where I wanted to go on this assignment with my squad boss. And he said, sure. But then I left to go pee. I came back and he had like chosen somebody else to go. And I look at him across this parking lot and I'm like, hey, fuck you. I said I wanted to come on this, and just like being able to behave that way, maybe not like the most mature, but to be really direct and aggressive with somebody. And then he was like, oh yeah, okay, sorry. And then he like pops his head in the back of the buggy, our crew transport. And he's like, Kelly, what's going on? You gearing up or what? Like, are you coming? And it's just like, it was instantly, it was okay. It was forgotten, but like that I could just like shout at this guy, call him out. And then we just move on with our day, and he's to this day one of my good friends. Like it's not a lack of love, but there's this amazing ability to be like direct and authentic. When you've been with people for that long, it's like you can't be anything but direct and authentic. Like you lose the filter, which I really love.
Do you, I've often felt so much because my dad simply wasn't around, right? And like I was always like looking, Kelly, for like this male authority figure in my life to like teach me how to be the guy. And I never got there. Like the closest I ever got was like my late stepfather-in-law, and he passed. I was like, God damn it, John, you were supposed to be my dude here. And I was so mad at him after he died, because I was like, I needed you, bruh. And I'm kind of, I kind of wonder, do you feel like when you found this crew, for these couple of years, was this like maybe this moment of like self-actualization where you're like, okay, I can kind of like get to this next point of who I am now because you've got these relationships and like this new tribe and kin there? Or was this just like, okay, this was passing? Like, how did this relationship, I guess, inform you and who you are now?
Oh, I love that question. Because I think it's different. Like for you as somebody like socialized as a man to have a dad or to not have a dad, it's like you don't have your model for how to be.
Right.
Like who are you supposed to be in the world? It's a little bit different growing up socialized as a woman and not having a dad. For me, it's like I was looking for that dad figure or that male authority figure. But also this weird thing happened with me. Like even when I was a kid, somebody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I was like 7 or 8 years old. And I said, a boy. It's like, I think there was like an element in which I missed my dad and I sort of like sought out people like him in romantic relationships throughout my life. But then I also like sought to become, the absent dad that I didn't have, like sought to like become that masculine figure in some way. I don't know. Psychology is complicated, but what's interesting is that going into firefighting kind of fulfilled in a weird, maybe not always healthy way, but in some ways in a beautiful fashion. Both of those needs. Like I found these male authority figures who were kind of dad-like, some of them toxic dads, some of them really lovely dads. Or older brothers, just like that sort of male energy that my life had always lacked because I just grew up with a single mother. But then also, I got to become that bro. Like I got to like be outside, work hard, be dirty. Not that those aren't things that women do; they are, but like they're traditionally masculine roles and virtues, right?
Man.
So like I'm not saying that like it's not a thing for women. It absolutely is. And I'm not saying that it is masculine, but like it's perceived that way. So I got to like become the man. And my dad is like, blue collar. He was a contractor for a long time and a builder. So these guys like resembled him. And then I remember thinking at one point as I like looked at my like filthy, calloused, tan hands, I was like, oh, they're my dad's hands. Like these are dad hands.
Yeah.
So it's this weird thing where it like fulfilled that need for like male figures in my life that I hadn't really had, and a closeness with them and a bond with them that I had only had like romantic relationships with men and kind of some friends. I have some good male friends, but not like this. Like this is like I had brothers. So it fulfilled that, and then also allowed me to finally like become a boy in the way that I wanted to, one of the boys.
I love that.
Even though it was only for a couple of years, I think that has really like sunk in to the fiber of me. That's like something that I now have had in my life that even though it's not actively happening now, it stays with me, like. And those relationships, some of them I still have, still close to some of the guys. So
I love this.
It's like, yeah, a really corrective experience, like healing experience.
Ooh, something about like the hottest fires like make the fort like there's that analogy. It was the hottest fires make the strongest steel or something like that. I don't know. I'm messing it up. There's an analogy: fires and human growth. Can I ask you some lightning round kind of questions here? This is new. We're playing around with this on here. I think I sent these to you. So I'll just give them to you quickly and you can kind of give us the short answers. Most terrifying moment on the Fireline?
2 moments where people were struck by trees. So the one I described, and then another one about 3 weeks later where a massive heavy hardwood fell on a colleague.
Okay. Piece of gear you never want to be without?
Toilet paper.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Can I tell you, like, okay. This is way too much. But since you went there, I'm carrying those dude wipes with me now. From like when I go out to places, they're so much better.
I
they're
had
so
wipes.
great.
Yeah, I had toilet paper and wipes, and then all my lady products.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, like I think in terms of tools, the thing I'd never want to be without is like a Pulaski, like my actual tool. You feel naked without that. But like in terms of like survival and health and sanitation, toilet paper.
I really appreciated how you were talking about putting the lady toiletries. I don't know the right word.
Like
everywhere, anywhere you could tampons. Why do I get so like blushed on this? I'm a grown man.
Because our culture is just like, oh, men should never think about this. This should be hidden from men.
It's like I know that ladies, but yes, okay. So you're
talking
about like
you're a father. You have a partner. You know what a tampon is, yeah.
Yes,
but yeah, I had them stored like all throughout the buggy, every bag that I had, my fire pack. Yeah, like you gotta be prepared.
Because of the nature of the job, I have to imagine that the gallows humor is pretty strong on fire crews.
Yes.
Do you remember any particular jokes? What's the best gallows humor you heard? Do you recall anything?
Oh my God, this is going to be hard for me to think right now. We might have to circle back to it. It's like I know there's examples, but they're not coming to me.
We'll put it in the Substack when it comes out.
Okay.
One smell that instantly takes you back to fire season.
Smoke, but like specifically smoke in something, like smoke in clothes or in hair. So like if I run into a friend who's like coming off of a fire, if my partner was coming back from a fire when I wasn't in the job anymore, I smell that like smoke in the shirt or smoke in the greens, the pants, and it's like it's a feeling of like excitement, jealousy.
Did you ever encounter people who don't want you out there in the country?
Yes. There was like an incident on the Slater fire in 2020 where we didn't get shot at, but somebody shot at firefighters who were like coming there to help defend their property. And this happens periodically, not necessarily like shooting, but people being like, get off of my land, get out of here. There's also like an anti-Forest Service sentiment in some parts of the country. So you'll get that just sort of like, we don't want you here. Oh, one time, this is a fun one. On the heck fire was this? This might have been the Slater as well. Was it? Okay. No, maybe August Complex. Anyway, we were in like the Humboldt area near all these like weed grows, and we had to drive through this massive marijuana operation that was just like miles of like greenhouses. And these people came out of their trailer and they had like AK-47s. They had like massive guns and they just lined up like kind of in front of their trailer and they just like watched our buggy, like had their guns and watched our buggies go past and just like mean mugged us. We were all like,
okay.
Holy shit. So things like that happen.
Remember, I think 2 Forest Service people got killed like in Idaho. Was it last year? Or were murdered by people. And I've
absolutely horrible.
Yeah, I've talked to guys on our cruise who were like, there are certain states they will not detail on. Like, absolutely not. Like, because they don't like being the way they get. And most folks, when I go to places like, they're like, oh, hey, thanks for being out here. You see the signs. They're wonderful. The communities are so receptive and so wonderful. It's like, this is like 99.5% of the time. But there's some weird folks out there.
Like, I would say, 99.9% of the time, we just had people being really grateful, really kind. There'll be signs on the road, like, thank you, firefighters. But then every once in a while, somebody's just like, get off my land, or, we don't want you here. And it's terrifying because you're like, I'm just literally trying to save your house, bro.
What was there something about wildland firefighting that surprised you the most?
I think the moments that are boring really surprised me because there's this saying in fire, hurry up and wait, where it's like you'll have a whole lot of action one day or for many days, and then you'll just have a day where like it rains or they don't have an assignment for you, or it's late season, whatever. You'll have a day where you just have to kind of like sit tight for hours. And I'm not good at that as a person. But B, it just surprised the hell out of me. I thought it would be like go, go, go all the time. Like you'd be so busy nonstop. But no, there's a fair amount of waiting in the job, and that really surprised me.
Is there a myth about wildland firefighters you'd like to destroy?
I just, in general, I think the hero image and the image of the job as like really masculine and broy. I guess maybe more than anything, like, that not all firefighters are men.
Right.
But the word fireman.
Right. Totally.
I would like to strike that word from the record, like entirely, and everything that goes with it. Just like not only the idea that the job is all men, but the idea that you have to be this like sort of hyper masculine, unfeeling, blank-faced, stoic bro to do this job. Like, not at all. No. And like some of the best people I know at the job, male and female, they undermine that stereotype every day.
Can I ask you about? Actually, I just saw this on Instagram just a few moments before we hopped on. What about like the sexual? It's weird. Men get sexualized as fire. It's one of these weird things where like there's this sexualization of men as firefighters and a couple other figures. firefighters and historians certainly, I think, is definitely to the top. Like
everyone's always sexualizing historians.
It's totally happened. I can't go anywhere, Kelly. It's awful.
Yeah, my calendar of hot historians on the wall. Like,
it's everywhere I go. It's like I can't get away from the whistles.
Can't get away from it.
It's awful. But did you find yourself, and you obviously knew other women firefighters out there. Is there a purposeful thing to like not are you trying to like actively not sexualize yourself in the way that you carry yourself or dress or things like that because you're women in a very sexualized man's field? Like, how does that work? Are you trying to push back? You talk about like not wanting to get into relationships or this, that, the other because you don't want to be like the woman who does whatever or so forth. Like, is there a difference in the way that women have to carry themselves because of that? In like this world?
Yeah, this is such a tricky question. I feel like this could be a really long conversation, just this. But
totally.
I feel like from woman to woman, their stance on this really varies. So my stance was that like I did not want to be too overtly feminine, but also I'm just not that way. Like I'm not a person who does her nails. I'm not a person who like does her hair. I don't think I even showered before this. I didn't. Yeah, I did not. I was like, it's online. They can't smell me.
Right. It's fine. I am to the east. I'll just give it a couple hours. No.
Yeah. but like, so for me, also though, but it's interesting because I've been told I got this, like some people who interviewed me when the book came out, like this one older lady said to me, she was like, "Oh, you just look too cute and sweet to have done this job." And I was like, okay, I'm extremely offended. I didn't say that. I was just like, ha ha ha. But I was like, fuck you. And then I got from like a friend who actually has become one of my like clients. I coach writers now. And this friend who had a whole career working for a structure department in California as a firefighter. And she's writing a book about it. She said that when she listened to my audiobook, that I sounded so sweet and feminine that at first she had a hard time reconciling that with like the job and the work and what it's like. And I was like, that is so interesting. I think I do come off as like pretty feminine and I'm like pretty warm and nurturing. And so I think I went as far as I could the other way, like tried to compensate for that by kind of like trying to be tough in whatever way I could. But there are women who really rebel against that. And they're like, I'm going to be in this job and I'm going to be as feminine as I want to be and show that is, that
good for them.
That like women are not a monolith. We are diverse. We have like many different ways of being in the world. So I think that's wonderful. Like when women are able to show up at the job and be like, I'm going to do this job really well and I'm going to be feminine, and like, I feel like I did that on an emotional level. Like I just was like very quote unquote feminine in my like empathy and my willingness to show my own feelings and talk about others' feelings and all of that. But yeah, it's so complicated because I know a lot of women in fire who are like, no, you got to toughen up. Yeah. You got to like keep everything on the inside, toughen up. Don't let them see what you really feel. And I see validity in that approach too. So it's like, I feel like every woman has to negotiate. How am I going to navigate this really male world? Who am I going to be here? And what works for me to be able to survive this, succeed in this? And it's really hard. Like, I think it's really hard for women to try to show up as themselves and negotiate this workplace culture.
I think it was so cool though when I was reading about you. There were moments when you were crying and you're just like, and then there were also like, I'll try this in, hell with it, let's do it. And then they're also like, F you, dude. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
It was like this really cool for me, just seeing you just experience. I mean, the experiences, I guess. Was there fear when you were writing this, or as you come to like you're writing a memoir? This is no longer a novel. This is like I'm writing about people who are going to read this, or even worse, hear about it without reading it.
That is the worst,
right? But like, was there fear of this? Like, okay, I'm putting this out there, and Tom, Sally, whoever, right? Is going to read this, and how is this going to affect those relationships? Am I going to get ostracized from this community that I really wanted to be part of. Like, what's that feeling like as you're producing and then releasing this and going on tour to promote it?
Yeah, I was definitely scared. And so, before the book came out, I was scared, and my editor was basically like, just write the full, most honest version of everything that happened, and then we'll kind of pull it back where we need to pull it back. So I had this draft where it was just like everything that people really said and did and how I felt about them and all of that. And then I kind of went through with each person in the book, who's obviously a real person in life, and I was like, do we need to show this scene of them? Like, does this serve the overall narrative? Does it serve my arc as like, you're the main character in your memoir? So does it serve, like, am I showing my growth by saying this thing about this person, or is it unnecessary? And so there were like a number of scenes that I ultimately was like, this really compromises this person and it's not necessary to the story.
Yeah.
So I cut these out. And then, everyone has a pseudonym in the book, and then the crew has a pseudonym. The town has a pseudonym. So like the memoir goes through like an intense legal vetting process. So I went through the whole thing. A lawyer reads the whole thing, and then they say, here's your vulnerabilities. Like it comes down to things like you can't even say certain things about somebody unless you frame it as your opinion. So we changed a lot of language. Like I'd be like, I thought that maybe this person might have been, it was my impression that blah, blah, blah. So went through that process, but I still was scared, even though I knew that like the book was relatively well protected from a lawsuit. I still was just scared of people being mad at me, for writing it. And I think a few of them they haven't said so. But I think a couple people on the crew that I just haven't heard anything from about the book, I think that they're not totally pleased. I don't think they've read it. I think they're just not pleased that it exists, because hotshot culture is very private. Like, they don't really want their business out in public. So I get it. I'm like, I totally understand why they feel that way. But the majority, I would say, of people on the crew, and I offered the book to them, some of them read it in drafts. And I sort of was like, can you read this draft and gut check me? Is this really what happened? Have I been fair to this person? So I went through some of that, and they gave me some feedback about like, oh, maybe you shouldn't say this or whatever. In general, they were like, no, I think you've been pretty fair, maybe too nice. And then when the book came out, I sent like the final published version to almost everybody on the crew that I had an address for. And I got some really nice feedback and had some really good conversations. So majority of them liked it and they were cool with it. And there was a lot of laughter about like some like embarrassing scenes. But there's definitely a few where it's like, I haven't heard. I don't think they've read it. Right. But I think they're like not stoked that it exists. And I'm like, sorry. I wrote it for myself to work through all of the things that I had to work through and learn. And I wrote it for other women, I didn't write it to avoid pissing off some hotshot who just doesn't want people to write about hotshots. So there's like a balance there.
I guess what I keep coming back to is I put this on Instagram yesterday. I put the book down. I was like, I need a minute to like go and think through this, right? I'm like, I read this real intensely for like several days straight. And I think what comes through to be, Kelly, is this is absolutely a book that tells you like about your experiences, on a hotshot crew. But this is not a hotshot expose. This is not let me tell you the secret history of firefighters, right? The men and all their issues. This is very much a story about you working through what it means to be your life, talking about these different things, and certainly like these experiences, how they kind of molded you. But I don't feel like it's like this hidden history, salacious story of this.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to blow anybody up or put anybody on blast or like I very much didn't want it to be a hit piece of any kind. So like there are moments that aren't in the book that are maybe some like tougher moments that I had with certain men on the crew, and you could say that I was like too soft and not calling those out, but like that's not the story of this book. This isn't like the history of harassment in the Forest Service. This is like my experience with fire, how it transformed me, how it ultimately made me stronger and was empowering and like changed the course of my life. That's the story. So I had to keep returning to like, what is the story I'm trying to tell here? You know what I mean? Like, it is not about these men and their behavior, good or bad. And like, I also had to think about like on the balance, if I look at the whole of like all the men I worked with and all the behavior that happened, what did it feel like overall? And in general, I had a great experience and I worked with wonderful men. So it's like, we don't need to write a hit piece about the bad moments that did happen.
Right.
Those are kind of between me and those people.
And and I really appreciate it because I think that there were some times as far as in the book, I'm thinking about this, or one moment you kind of point out like, hey, I could talk about this more, but I'm not trying to belabor this. But I appreciated this. It was like you're literally trying to like, this is the story that I'm trying to talk about here. And I found it absolutely engaging because I kept thinking about how this was about you and your own like growth story. And that was, I think that was the cool part. It just, as someone who writes and thinks about like these narrative arcs and stuff like that. I want to ask you this. Oh, no, thank you. Cause I just loved listening to this and in my own head, this felt like such a movie to me like this thing started as a movie podcast and I'm seeing it play out in my head. It's so well done.
Thank you.
Kelly, you did this for 2 years. It's obviously stayed with you since then. What happens next for you? You said you're coaching other writers. Like, what are you doing now? Like, what comes next for you? What's the next chapter in your story?
We talked about loving the Forest Service. I would love to go back into working outdoors. Yeah. I've been out of it now for almost 5 years, mostly because I was writing the book really intensely. And then I was pregnant and then had a baby in 2024. So I've been pretty busy with all of that. But I would love to get back out there. And the problem right now is like, they just aren't hiring those jobs. Like the jobs don't exist. And I have a toddler. So it's like, something like being a wilderness ranger, which I would love to do again. You have to go out and be out in the backcountry and be gone so much. I really wouldn't want to do that with a really small child. So I think for me, it's like for the next few years, I'll probably keep focusing on writing, coaching other writers, teaching writing. After all, that, I did go to school for 7 years for all of that. So it's nice to use those skills. But I can envision this future where like, I did my writing and other work like that in the winter. And then in the summer, I worked in the woods again. Even as a season, honestly, I would love to do it as a seasonal.
I love it.
Because I just like do it for 6 months, really enjoy it. And then in the winter be like, peace, I'm going to go sit indoors with my book and my coffee.
And doesn't that sound like the dream?
Right? The dream. You just have to figure out the finances. It's a small matter.
Okay, there's that. But aside from like the ability to sustain oneself and one's family, right. It sounds good.
Aside from fighting for your family is totally fine. But I think if I could get to the point where like my writing and my coaching was bringing in enough of a good income and I could like squeeze that into 6 or 8 months, then I could kind of like between the two things cobble together a living and have this beautiful like indoor, kind of like intellectual life. And then this like outdoor life lived in the body, which is like my favorite thing.
I love it. I've told you this like 14 times now since I really, really just loved reading this thing. I was really looking forward to talking to you because I just knew that you were awesome. And I now have been talking to you for an hour and a half and can confirm said awesomeness. Thank you for taking time. It's Sunday morning. I have a mic. I'm not awesome. I just have a microphone.
No, it takes a lot of skill to like shape the questions and to direct a conversation. It's a skill.
I mean, thank you. This was a delight. I we're gonna get this pod up here in like a couple weeks, but like, thank you for taking the time, Kelly. I know you have other stuff going on, like said toddler, and things like that. So,
gives her grandparents a chance to hang out with her. They're happy.
Oh, that's perfect. That's like, perfect.
Here you go. Here's a toddler.
Oh, I love that. It's perfect. Well, all the grandparents are in Kentucky and Tennessee for mine, but mine's 18. He doesn't want to do anything other than like send me vague Instagram posts on occasion. It's like, hey, I'm looking. Like he'll talk to me. We had a long conversation about John Brown the other day, which delighted me. I was like, yeah, let's talk about John Brown. Let's go. Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad we're not talking about Napoleon anymore. So absolutely. Anyway, Kelly, this is a blast. Thank you. I'm going to put this, expect for me to tag you a lot on social media because I believe in this book. I want to people to read it. It's so cool. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It was delightful to talk with you. I love this.
And that's a wrap here at Reckoning with Jason Herbert. Thank you so very much to my amazing guest, Kelly Ramsey. Kelly, you are such a badass. Thank you so much for being here and sharing with us your journey today. That was awesome. If you guys want to find her book, it's called Wildfire Days, A Woman, a Hotshot Crew in the Burning American West. I'll put links to that everywhere, all over social media. Thank you, of course, to our crew of one, Fletcher Powell, for producing this show and making it run. And thank you to all of you for continuing to be part of this Reckoning crew, this wrecking ball. I don't know what we are, but we're all in this together. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing this pod with your friends, putting it on social media. Real thank you to everybody who continues to post this stuff on social media where people can find it and be exposed to it. It's the best way we can share this pod and keep growing. So thank you so much for being here. Guys, we have a ton of stuff that I've already recorded that is waiting for you. So much stuff coming. I hope you like it. We got some great stuff coming. So stick around. We'll see you a little bit later. Ciao for now. Bye.